somebody was asking me the other day why they're not more working class voices on BookTube, and I was like, because even a camera or a mobile phone is an expense that some people don't have. Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon of Savage Reads, and today I'm joined by my mate Kerry to talk about being Lowborn, which is inspired by her new book, which will be either just about to be out, just out, or have just come out. It's here. You may well have heard of Kerry because of Tony Hogan bought me an ice cream float before he stole my ma, and I've been mentioning this as almost being, this is kind of the story behind this, which I think also adds a really lovely double dimension to it, because it's the story behind the story and everyone loves to know how a story is created, but at the same time it's also a story. Well, it's not a story, well, it is a story because everything is a story. Life's a story. I've gone too deep. Let's all move on. Sorry, Kerry. Kerry, you talk.
Kerry, you talk.
You sell your book.
So Lowborn is, the tagline here is growing up, getting away and returning to Britain's poorest towns. And so effectively what it is a memoir of my childhood, which was really lived in extreme poverty, with many of the sort of related issues that come with poverty. And then me as a grown woman and a novelist and like a relatively comfortable place in my life, returning to those towns to see what life would be like now for people growing up in my situation, but also trying to reconcile like that feeling of being like the poorest kid with the shittest clothes, with nothing in the cupboard, never a spare penny, to a place of like a sort of status, you know, where like I write for newspapers and I've got a publishing deal, and so it's kind of reconciling sort of that, which I've never really fully sort of come to terms with. You know, I felt a lot of the time like I was acting, like I was playing the part of like an author, but I hadn't really.
I like that idea that you think you're acting. It's just, no, that fascinates me, that idea that you kind of, because you do, and we've talked about this a lot together separately, and actually I should say, one of the reasons that me and Kerry got to know each other was because of this book, and we mentioned it in a video of our Reading Horizons, which I'll link down below. This got to me and hit certain parts of my childhood, which whilst not the same, there are a lot of similarities, which is why I wrote to you and was like, this book has had this effect on me. So reading this has been, I read this in Newcastle, which is where I grew up, and it had this massive emotional effect on me because I was walking down the streets where we would sometimes not be able to afford milk, reading about other people, because when you're in that situation you think at once everyone must be like that, but also at once that you're the only person like that.
Yeah, and also I think there's so few representations of it. I mean, one of the reasons why I decided to do this after I'd written 2 novels already, I'd already written a 3rd novel actually, which will be published after Lowborn. But the reason I
Teaser.
It's called You Are Here, coming in 2022. But the reason why I decided to write this is because I think that these voices are not heard. So we don't realise how universal it is, and we don't realise how common it is, but also that it's happening right next door to us. If we're sort of comfortable and middle class, I think that we read the statistics and we know what the newspapers are saying, but we don't understand the human story of people who are living really in poverty like a street away.
How hard is it to write it knowing that people who are involved in your life may read it, but also how hard is it to go back to that part of your life? Even though it's a hard time and you go through, it's not like you're constantly, it's not a misery memoir.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I mean, you know, because life, like for me, life wasn't a misery memoir. A lot of it was really, really tough, and I don't shy away from that. I mean, I think it's, a lot of people using the term unvarnished, which I think is pretty accurate. You know, it's pretty hard hitting, but you know, my life was also full of moments of joy and happiness and excitement and
kittens,
curiosity, kittens and chocolate biscuits, you know, and like you know, and you know, your first Kylie tape, all that sort of stuff. But it was exceptionally hard, and I knew it was going to be difficult when I set out to write it. I did not realise what a personal journey I go through, and so a lot of this book actually in the sort of present day scenes is about me transforming my ideas of where I come from and who I am, really away from that sort of sense of shame that I was still carrying with me, even though I knew academically or theoretically that I had no reason to be ashamed of where I come from or how I've been born. But it's hard to put that into practice, if you like, to really embody it. And I know that like a lot of people say, oh, you know, this book was life-changing for me. Genuinely, the last year for me was absolutely life-changing. It totally changed my sense of myself.
Well, what I found fascinating as well, and I don't want to give too many spoilers because I do want everyone to go and read this book, but one thing that I found is that you didn't even know some of your own history and were then discovering it, and as the reader you are therefore doing. I mean, it's strange for me as well because I'm reading my mate's book about their life, but I'd like to think that I can separate the two. But actually, one thing that was lovely was I had Kerry's voice in my ears as I was reading it.
Sorry about that.
No, if you get the audiobook or hear it on the radio, it's old Kerry having a chat with you. I think that will be very emotive to listen to as well. They say about rose-tinted spectacles, don't they? Did it shock you when you learned certain stuff? And again, I don't want to give too much away because...
honestly, like a lot of the reason why I was compelled to write this book, like some books you write because you really want to, or you're curious, you think it's a fun project. This book I was really compelled to. As you say, like it's really the companion to this one. This book I was compelled to write, but didn't feel that I had the voice or the courage to write about it in like my own sort of story. This book I was completely compelled to write, and I really felt like. I can't remember what the question was.
I look at some of the things and think, I can remember that it was actually seeing my friend Polly. We lost touch from the age of about 6 to the age of about 20, but we were best friends from about 3 till maybe a bit later actually. And I had just thought when I was a kid that sometimes when we didn't have, somehow we had Frosties but no milk. Can't quite work out how the correlation of that worked. But I thought having Frosties with water was like a thing. And then when Polly mentioned it to me as a grown up, I was like, oh my God, actually it was difficult sometimes. And that's why I was new. Were you shocked by kind of unrose tintifying it? That's not a real word.
I'll take it. I suppose like one of the reasons I decided to write about it was because I was haunted by a lot of sort of gaps in my history. So I had like a sleep disorder called night terrors, where I'd wake up and have hyper realistic hallucinations of people like holding a gun to my head, or children begging me for help and me not being able to do. I mean, every single night I woke up basically thinking I was going to die.
Gosh.
And so I knew I had terrible anxiety. Like there were things that told me that I had things that I needed to know about and resolve. And so the things I found out actually weren't huge surprises to me, and actually helped me put the pieces in place a lot more about why I felt the way I did. And also like sometimes when I went back to those places that I'd like run away from as fast as I could and never look back to, I discovered like this amazing sense of community, or these incredible local heroes like doing incredible things.
Great Yarmouth seemed to be one particular place where it had a lot of trauma, but when you went back you were almost surprised, one, that how you felt about that trauma now, but also just how it wasn't quite how you remembered it, and there were other positives to it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I remembered like how exciting it was, and also like I really learned to be tough there, you know, like I learned to be like streetwise and smart, and you know, I was highly motivated in Great Yarmouth, because basically that's, without any spoilers, that's where everything like really hit the shit bucket, and I was either going to like never survive, or I was going to pull myself out of it as much as I was allowed to, and try and make a better life for myself. And I was reminded of sort of that tenacity and that will to live that I had there.
And how does it feel knowing that this is going to be out there and people are going to be able to read it? I mean, one, it's brilliant because it's going to highlight what it is like to grow up poor, and hopefully give lots of people who get it in their hands, which I think is going to be one of the brilliant things. Buy it for people you know, is my advice. But I think how's it going to be for you to have sort of, that's quite a raw position to be in, not to make you panic.
I mean, I won't lie, it's scary as shit having it out there. Like, it's really, really frightening. I did do a series of poll columns, but while I was writing this, and there I slowly revealed little parts of this story, like in the columns that I wrote each month. And one of the reasons why I went to really intimate places, like very raw, honest places with this book, is because I had so many people contact me and be like, thank you so much. I have never heard my story written like this before, and I'm sitting here on the tube and I'm crying as I read this, and I got those messages every single time I wrote, and I was like, there's real value. And also, like, nothing that happened to me is actually shameful. Really, nothing was my fault. It happened because I was poor and because I was a woman, and I feel like it's really important to say that. It doesn't stop it from being terrifying. It's definitely terrifying.
But also because it's with this, it's going to be like, if people have read it and you go into a room to do an event, you don't know them, but they already know you. Yeah, that's quite a situation. But
quite a situation. It's quite a situation.
Oh, that's quite a situation.
I find it really liberating. writing though, I've got to say, like I found, so I spent like, so I left the Council Estates when I was sort of 20, I'm now 38. I spent 18 years, like I kind of think of like living undercover, you know, like being forced to change and adapt my behaviours to fit in with this like sort of new culture I found myself in. It's enormously liberating to not have to pretend anymore, to be really open about everything that's happened. Like one of the ways it changed my life is that I actually feel probably like, I don't know, 100 times happier after writing this book, which is not what you'd expect for spending a year exploring your most traumatic instance as a child. But, you know, it's been sort of revelatory for that reason.
But do you think that's because part of the process in writing it down and going through it is that you have to, and it's horrible to say this because I hate this term, writing is therapy. But one thing that I do notice through the book and just knowing you and then seeing how writing Lowborn has been, is that words have always kind of been a saviour around you, is how I put it. Because like libraries, when you started in books, and that was a big thing for me, libraries.
Huge. I mean, I really, one of the things I feel most passionate about, and actually we should talk about in the book, is that good teachers who are able to do their work, you know, who are able to do the really important pastoral work of caring for kids and making sure that they're seeing them and seeing what's going on at home, and also libraries are the things that really saved me. We moved around all the time, you know, but one thing we always had was a library. It was always free, it was always safe, it was always a warm place to go, first with my mum and then as a teen by myself, you know. It's this real harbour. And for me, like, ordering my thoughts through words has always been something that has been really, really valuable. I did a lot of this job actually with Tony Hogan, my first book, and this kind of feels like it's almost like the second part that's completed it. So many other people have had this experience, but not everyone gets the opportunity to write about it publicly.
But that's also the thing, I think it's not just that, I think it's the shame thing that we've talked about. And actually I did a video with Scotty, which I'll link down below, where we talked about how coming from a poor background, coming from real working class background, has so many odd little bits to it that when you feel guilty a lot of the time, you feel shameful. So if you get in a position where you're feeling like you're successful or things are going really well, I'm always looking for what's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
I've always got a backup plan, like almost like an escape route, which I don't think that will ever go, no matter how secure I feel. I think that will stay. But I think as well, when you are, I know Caitlin Moran's talked about this before, there's this point where people try to tell you you're not working class anymore once you've hit a certain point. And that really annoys me.
Maybe actually one of the benefits for me is that I've never really made that much money from my writing. I earn about the same now as I did when I worked at a call centre on a yearly basis. So, you know, so I never really sort of had that much more sort of material wealth. But like, obviously, like I've got a different life, you know, like I do interviews for newspapers and I travel around to fancy literary festivals and stuff. But, you know, ultimately the people who usually say that are people who have an interest in disenfranchising the working class from each other. You know, it's a division and separation thing. And for me, they're usually people who've never grown up poor, so don't know what it's like. But we know what it's like because I do my budget every single day. Doesn't matter if I've only like spent 10 quid on shopping, I still do it, you know. I also have a get out plan. I constantly think about what would happen if we lost everything and me and Peter had to go and survive like with no money or through the benefit system, you know. And those are the legacies that don't leave you. I put in the book that it's in your marrow, you know, and you remember it and you know what it's like to be poor and you will never ever forget that.
I mean, there's one point where you talk about a woman who leaves a £10 note that you see.
Oh God.
And how actually I would now, and well, you said at the time that would be like a cup of coffee and a cake.
Yeah.
And I do that sometimes where I sit down, but then it's a tricky one where you have to kind of almost reward yourself because you've worked hard to get what you've got, but then there's a leveler there constantly. How hard was it seeing people in similar situations to where you were now?
Just incredibly hard. Like incredibly crowded. Like even, I mean, to be honest, like I always, like I'm kind of, in one way I'm quite glad that kind of kept the empathy and the memory is still very fresh for me. So I talk about how I still cannot go past a pawn shop without tearing up a little bit, even saying the words made me a bit teary, because I know what it is like to go in with whatever shitty meagre possessions you have and try and get a few quid because you have no food. And obviously like seeing the reality of that was really painful. But I mean, I guess like the benefit of going back to those places was that I also met people doing extraordinary things in the community. So I saw so much love and community and care and like, you know, sort of dynamic action around people not having enough food or kids not having enough school uniforms or there not being a provision for people who were facing addiction problems, and that was really inspiring, I think. But a lot of what the book is really writing about as well is that I feel I've a debt to pay, you know, and I've tried very hard, I think, over the years. I started in NGOs. I did that because I want to make a difference. I've done quite a lot of activism in my writing life to try and increase sort of representation of working class people in the literary world. But I still have a very big debt to pay to those towns.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of reviving those towns is about the people who left really fast, going back and trying to bring some of their own good fortune back to those places and the people they've, you know, who are left behind, essentially.
So I'm now thinking, I don't know if I've done that, and that's something that I need to think about a little bit more. One thing to talk about positive, joyful things as well, because there is a lot of it, but charity shops. We love a charity shop, me and Kerry. One of my favourite memories of our time together, our friendship so far, is not only the night that we got so drunk that you lost a coat and got your hands covered in barbecue from McDonald's.
Thanks for mentioning in every video, Simon.
But also the time they went to Southport and we literally did a charity shop run.
Yes.
Southport has the most amazing charity shops. But I think it's just a reminder to you, and something that I need to do looking around this room, that people seem to be forgetting charity shops in favour of online. And I just think if you've got things that you don't need, do give them to charity. I mean, I still love a route around a charity shop, but it did remind me of how it worries me when you go down high streets and people say, oh, they're just charity shops. There's a reason for that. There's a reason that the charity
they really need to exist. So one of the things I talk about is how I go to North Shields, which is like a very deprived area, and there's loads of charity shops, as there are in most poor areas, because that's where people buy their clothes. But one of them is like a sort of discount charity shop. It sells everything for £2, and like I go in and I'm like, you know, and I love a charity shop. I love a good rummage, but I go in and I rummage through, and I'm like, oh, none of the stuff's that nice, you know. And I see women really concentratedly like going through, because you can see they want to find a good jumper for £2, or they want to find a pair of jeans. And the guilt I felt leaving because I didn't have to make the choice to try and find something was quite overwhelming. A big thing that I try and do to reconcile sort of my new life with my previous life is to consume less. You know, like, we don't need as much stuff as we buy. We don't need to consume as much as we do.
So 2 questions just to kind of finish it off. What did you most learn about yourself in writing Lowborn? And also, what do you think the one message you would give to people in that situation?
So about myself, probably the biggest thing I learned was that, so I still had like a lot of feelings of inferiority and shame and a lot of anxiety about how people responded to me and perceived me, so that I was really overcompensating a lot. And I just learned to like be a little bit prouder of myself, actually. You know, the example I use is that if you're working class and you manage to succeed in something like literary publishing, then you've done it like Ginger and Fred, you know, like you've done it in heels and backwards, you know, essentially. And so it brought me like a lot of peace in that respect, you know. And the thing that I hope that people will get out of reading the book, and what I should say is that I hope people will read it. So we're doing a big tour as part of it. We're going to local community centres and libraries. We're giving away books. I'm working really, really hard to make sure that this book actually gets to the communities that it's about and the stories that it tells. And what I hope they will see is that despite the narrative, the most popular narrative, which is, if you're poor, you somehow deserve it. If these things happen to you, you brought it on yourself. You're lazy, or you're work shy, or, you know, you fucked up in some way. Actually, it is structural, systematic inequality
that creates a dreadful cycle.
Yeah, and it's so obvious, you know, and also, generational. Like a lot of what's this about is about generational poverty. So my family were always poor, and we remained poor until I basically got lucky. So that actually, you know, whatever the common media narrative is and the broad lazy stereotype is, this is not your fault. This is a societal problem, and by recognising that, hopefully you can start to challenge it.
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. And I think the one thing that I took away from it was it's the how people perceive working class and how they think that it's just one thing when it's so varied, but also it's the cycle and how do we break it. But it has also made me think that I need to do more to try and, I don't know, I need to do more. That's how I came away feeling about it.
We'll do something.
Yeah.
Do something together, yeah.
Yeah, we will. Well, we might be doing that thing, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about Breakthrough, are we?
Yeah. We're doing the Breakthrough Festival. It's a...
We say we, Kerry's organised it, I'm just going to be there to do some stuff.
That's generous of you.
No, I suddenly was like, oh my god, people are going to think this is my idea.
If it goes wrong, it's our idea. If it goes well, it's my idea. But so it's the Breakthrough Festival. It's an entirely free accessible literary festival. So with mentoring sessions and talks by some really like bestseller big names, and some workshops by likewise some very respected writers. And the idea is that it basically offers for free all the opportunities that most people can't afford to pay for. Twitter UK are sponsoring the venue for us. They're giving us their offices, and we'll have British Sign Language translation and hopefully a creche on site and a travel bursary so that people can afford to get there, and a buddy system so that people can stay in each other's houses. And Simon will be there also assisting. So thank you.
Doing some bits and bobs. One of the things that we need to do is find more working class voices and get them to speak out. And publishing isn't necessarily that ready for working class voices, and also can be quite exclusive in a lot of different ways. So I think what's quite nice is once you get into it, it's how you can change it from the inside out. There's definitely a movement for more working class, because also, I'm not being funny, working class people have got bloody good stories.
Amazing
Stories.
Yeah,
there's so many like cobbled street stories of like people's families where you just think, oh my god, I can't believe that's real. Like
drama and love and humour.
Well, my great uncle, when he died, his wife went away for 7 years because they didn't get on very well, Betty. She didn't like him very much. When she went back 7 years later, he was married with someone else. Stories like that, genius. Anyway, thank you, Kerry, for coming out. And honestly, I've wanged on about this book a lot. It's not the literary or technical term, wanged on.
I'll take
but
it.
I do really, really recommend it, and I shall link it and Kerry's other books down below. But yeah, thanks, Kerry.
Thank you.
And I'll see you all soon. Bye. What was that?
I don't know. Should I do it? Should I not?
So what have you learned about yourself in the message I went on? I put on a right old tangent there. Just go out.